Well, now on your screen is author Francis Spufford. His most recent book is called Unapologetic: Why Despite Everything, Christianity Can Still Make Surprising Emotional Sense. And he joins us as Book TV is in London. Francis Spufford, why do you use the word emotional in the subtitle there?
Because there are lots and lots of books that talk about whether Christianity makes intellectual sense or historical sense or conceptual sense or cultural sense or theological sense, but the emotions are both the most obvious part and the part that's hardest to describe. If you're on the inside already, it doesn't need much explanation. If you're on the outside, it's mysterious enough to be maybe something you'd never quite get. And this is probably a book that makes most sense in the British context. It is coming out in the United States later in 2013, but it was written to address a kind of a British situation in which religion is really pretty remote from most people's daily experience. This is not a country where most people go to church on Sunday, or where people arrive in a new town and think, which church shall we join? They lie in bed on Sunday mornings doing other sensible human things like that. So if you want to explain why religion does make sense, why, and despite everything, and I mean everything, despite the whole bloody and complicated history of organised religion, why it's worth sticking with, at least for some people, then you can't describe the ideas on the outside. You've got to make some kind of stab at talking people through what it feels like. Looked at one way, that's a considerable challenge, because pouring one headful of experience into the head of a reader is tricky. On the other hand, that's what books excel at. Non-fiction as well as fiction. Books are great at creating imaginative sympathy for positions you don't share yourself. Books are virtually the only medium that tell you what it's like being somebody else. And what I wanted to do was to draw on myself as my sample believer, despite everything, and kind of demonstrate what the inside of my head feels like to other people. So it's a kind of memoir, but more argumentative than that sounds. It's a kind of explanation by demonstration of the way the bits slot together, assuming absolutely nothing, so far as I can manage that, absolutely nothing in the way of knowledge and kind of assumptions. So everything has to get defined from scratch.
So are you a practicing Christian?
I am a practicing Christian. I'm kind of surprised to hear myself say that.
Why?
Because I wasn't for a very, very long time, and it's something I came back to after 20 years of atheism as an adult.
Atheism?
Atheism. Not vague agnosticism, but kind of full-on, settled, comfortable atheism. And I came back surprising myself a little bit as I did. I think that's useful in a way, because it means I don't have to imagine what it's like being an atheist. I kind of know that already. So in terms of building a bridge from over there to over here, I've been over there, and now I seem to be over here, so I ought to be able to manage the bridge.
How did you go across that bridge?
Oh, I must be careful of my language, because I'm on television. I messed up, to put it no more strongly than that. I made one of the classic adult messes of my life, and found that I needed forgiveness, basically, and went looking at the address where once upon a time, long ago, I had been told as a child that you went looking for such things, and to my considerable surprise, there it seemed to be. So
was that the church?
It was the church.
Why was that surprise considerable?
Because, like a lot of people who left religion behind in childhood, I thought of religion as childish. It's a classic mistake. It's a classic mistake where, because you last saw something at a particular address, you think that address defines the thing. In fact, religion is only childish if you're a child. It turns out to be really adult if you're an adult with adult needs and adult dilemmas. But again, I get the impression this kind of thing is probably less surprising in the American context. And for sure, it's less embarrassing. Embarrassing is an enormously powerful British emotion. I kind of hope it doesn't, that the continent of North America isn't paralysed by embarrassment to quite the terrible extent we are.
Do you detail the experience in Unapologetic, what happened to you?
I do, but it's not a kind of straight down the line ABC linear memoir kind of a book. My experiences are in there, but it isn't the story of my life as a believer. It's an attempt to find a piece of string which will run all the way through the experiences of kind of guilt, forgiveness, questioning about the problem of pain and how the world works, and then leading on over here in a way which makes for kind of one kind of believing life story. Not every kind. There are lots of other places that people can and do begin, but in my experience, the way to be universal is to be really, really specific. You start off with the human stuff you know most vividly yourself, and you say, do you recognize this? And on the whole, people do. Even if it's nothing like their experience, what they recognize about it is something about the way it's kind of possessed in human terms, something about how it is, palpably close to the self and to the kind of the brain and the heart and the soul of another human being. And people are quite curious about other humans and quite willing to cross bridges to experiences they haven't necessarily had themselves, so long as you can describe them right, so long as you can kind of help them imaginatively along the way.
Francis Spufford, is atheism a belief system?
Oh dear. It really annoys atheists when you say so, and it isn't always. There are quantities of atheists out there who simply have the lack of a belief, but there are other atheists out there who are gripped by something altogether more emotional than that, altogether more passionate on their part. And in that case, it really makes no sense to say the lack of a belief. It is a positive belief in the lack of a God. And people like that very often have an extremely charged emotional relationship with religion. They are as much anti-theists as they are atheists. It isn't just that there's no God, it's that they really wish there wasn't religion as well. And over here, books like Richard Dawkins's The God Delusion have been enormous hits, but I suspect in a slightly different way than the way they have been in the United States, because it's not like it's bringing the good news of free thinking to some poor kid in the middle of incredibly Bible belty kind of Kansas or somewhere, that you're not alone, there are other atheists out there. Over here, almost everyone is without a belief, and people are interested in it because it seems to be news from a scientist about how the world works, which I think is misleading, because Richard Dawkins is great as a popularizer of evolutionary biology. He's a marvellous writer. But when it comes to religion, I think he's kind of whistling in the dark. I don't think he has an enormous amount to offer, and I've been annoyed by how successful the book has been. There have been lots of attempts to answer it here, but all of them seem to me to kind of buy into the essential mistake he's making, which is to treat religion as if it was some kind of defective second-grade style of science, something that basically consists of a bunch of yes-no propositions about the universe, and you can go, hey, my yes-no propositions about the universe are better than that because they're testable empirically, and then goodbye religion. Whereas it seems to me that what religion deals with is those areas of human experience where proof is not available. We believe when we don't know, and that's not a contemptible thing to do. The test of belief is whether it's done with generosity of heart and fullness of spirit. And it seems to me that it would be helpful if the non-believing majority in Europe got a little reminder about what the world looks like from within belief, and recognise that we're actually not that weird.
Francis Spufford, there's been a whole genre of books on atheism. Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, two of the guests that we've done in this series in London. A.C. Grayling, and Justin Webb of the BBC, who describes American religious thought in many ways as Stone Age beliefs, and then A.C. Grayling, who is a committed atheist. Why is it that Europe has gone this way, especially when there's so many historical churches and so much history